My name is Greg Raver Lampman. My pronouns are he, his, and him. And we came here from Virginia. And my first deep interest in the Chumash culture was when I was hiking in the mountains, just right over there between the church, the Santa Monica Mountains, and I came across a cave that had Chumash cave paintings in it. And I wanted to find out if anybody had documented that, if anybody knew about it. And I got in touch with somebody who said there were 7 or 8 just in those hills there, cave paintings. But they didn't want to say where they were because they were afraid they would be desecrated. And that got me starting to think about language. I'm a linguist and started thinking about language revitalization and if we could help with language revitalization. And that's where I came across Matthew. Matthew is the chairman of the Barbareño, Ventureño Band of Mission Indians. He's also the president of the Lulapin Foundation. And he's a Chumash scholar primarily focused on Chumash language, the Ventureño dialect of the Chumash language. He's a recipient of the prestigious Luce Indigenous Knowledge Fellowship. And let's all welcome Matthew up here and to say it in Chumash, Haku, Matthew.
Tapi washa chishnachit chwasha cheshi ishal. Good morning. It's a beautiful day, and I'd like to lead in with some Chumash oratory, which is to bring in. Well, I'll translate it afterward. Takshayaniyo, kai kika, lokash tas ho kakunub mawa. Atapliish gashnuna gishtapli he'awotoko. Ha. Minawan, kashmaktu shi ishal kashukshtahai hemiwalach. Ushumushiyu, kai kika yala'a, loka ki ali kike, hesuwaksa chutash, loka shokshposhina shi chutash, anyala'a kakiposh, unta. And essentially, this is a hearkening to the world, to all the directions. We're saying, have pity on us, you who rise in the east and lights the day from south to north and sets in the west. And then have pity on us, Chutash, which is Mother Earth, and whose umbilical cord, or Shokshposhinash, is a staff that we usually have, which signifies the umbilical cord that is the center of the world, that links all other worlds together. And for the moment we're all together, we are bound, and we are all trained on this and held united to this center of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite Matthew to come and tell our children a little bit about your tradition. Children, you want to listen to Matthew. He's got some very interesting things to teach us.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, trying to think of what I'd have to tell you. It's pretty simple. Yeah, well, it's kind of a story. It's our fundamental story is that in our religion and our belief, the earth is our mother and the sun is a father. And they're who give us and nurture our lives here in this world. And our way of seeing the world is that we're in this middle world. It's a big flat circle. And there's a lower world, and there's an upper world. And the upper world is held up by the golden eagle slope. And it's with the movement of his wings that gives you the phases of the moon. You know how they're, you know how, hello? You know how the moon has its phases, how it's full and then it's a quarter and then it's a crescent? That's caused by the movement of the golden eagle's wings. And this world here is held up by two giant serpents that sometimes show up in the ocean out here. And it's in this, and this whole world is held together by an umbilical cord. And we call that the three worlds. Some people think there are 5 worlds, and that's okay because how can anyone truly know? So we're supportive of philosophy and wondering, which is, I think is the most important thing. And I have to draw on some notes here. But there is another figure that's very important to us that's Coyote. And we call him Shapashiwash. And he is like a favorite uncle. And he teaches us what to do and what not to do. Often, more often than not, he teaches us what not to do by doing it. He's mischievous, but he also has superpowers. And he's always looking after us, and he's always on our side. So he's a favorite of ours. And I wanted to also share our main job in this world is like the birds. You see the birds every day. What are they doing? They're just going around eating, right? And that is our job, is to gather the fruits of the earth. That's our main job. And food is central to almost all religions around the world. Everybody experiences the world in the form of a year. And everyone has different ways of talking about how they experience that year. And that's why we have, God's creation is so diverse in how we talk about these things. So what I'm sharing with you is how we see it here originally and still today. And so in gathering the fruits of the earth, we sustain our life, and that's our main job in this world. And coloring books, of course, that's super important also. And so when I was a child, my mother, I wanted my mom to take me to see God. And I said, I want to see him. And so she stopped at a church not far from here in the San Fernando Valley. And we went in there, and there was big drapes. And I sat there, and I said, well, where is he? And I said, is he behind the drapes like the Wizard of Oz? And she said, no, she's trying to explain to me how he's everywhere, but you can't see him, but he's there. And it was frustrating to me. But I've learned since that God is everything that's outside here, all together. And it's hard to comprehend. But just what's most important to know is that we're always at home. And when we're outdoors with all the other fruits of the earth and the children of the earth, which the plants and the birds and the trees and the rocks, that we're at home and we're part of the world. And that's what I'd like to share with you today. Oya oya.
And I'd now like to invite Matthew to come up and share with us. You can be wherever you like, here or walking around, whatever is comfortable for you. Oh. You have to hold it close to you.
Hello.
There we go.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm sorry if I'm not a great public speaker, but I do have a lot to say, and sometimes I can't shut up, so feel free to boo when you want me to stop. Presently, I have the honor of serving as chairman of the Barbareño Ventureño Band of Mission Indians, and we're named so because our members descend through and survived the decimation at the Santa Barbara and the San Buenaventura missions. And a lot of our tribal members, including myself, descend from the islands. I'll introduce myself with our language just because that seems to be what, it's good to have an occasion to speak the language. Samtanet masa chichwa, kasila masa, samtanet Matthew Vestuto. Kere Inez Preston, Kokowash Hardin Stanley, Noan Chumash Kasila Lulapin, Noan Kachnuna Swacha Slimu, Ka Noan Kakabiohai. Greetings, my name is Masa Chichwa. It's difficult to say, so people just call me Masa, and I also go by Matthew Vestuto quite often. And my mother is Inez Preston, and my father is Harding Stanley. He passed away. And it's a traditional greeting. We say it twice. Usually we don't have a microphone, so we say it loud so everybody can hear it. And my family descends from the village of Swacha, which is today called Scorpion's Anchorage, on the island of Limu, which is today called Santa Cruz Island. My great-grandmother, great-great-great-great-grandmother was the first islander baptized at San Buenaventura Mission. Before the mission was built, she was named Maria Rosa, and this was around 1769. She was the 33rd person baptized there when the Spanish came. And ever since then, our family has resided here between Talapop, which is Las Virgenes, and Oxnard and Ventura region. And I'm grateful to be here and talk with you. I'm going to focus on the language. I'm here today representing the Lulapin Chumash Foundation. We are the Barbareño Ventureño Band of Mission Indians is a tribal group. We have tribal members. And we are organized under a nonprofit because the federal government has failed to recognize us, along with about 79 or 80 other tribes here in California. So we do business under that nonprofit. However, the Lulapin Chumash Foundation is a Big Tent, Chumash-led nonprofit that is dedicated toward working well with the various bands and unaffiliated individuals and families. And our main mission is to build a healthy community through education and events, ecological stewardship, and economic development. And we are intending to complement the tribal bands whenever one day I will not be on the tribal council, but I'll still be working to help uplift the tribal council and do things that a nonprofit should, which is mainly my teaching of language and building community. And so to discuss a little bit about my trajectory with language and a little brief bio, my mother was a teacher. I grew up here in Woodland Hills, and I hated school. And it showed in my GPA. I graduated with a 1.69 grade average. But the beautiful thing about it was that I did not lose my love for learning. And when I graduated high school, I liked photography. I kept on to that, and I would go to the library and learn more about that, and that led me into learning about art. And then I was really moved by a man named Dwayne Michaels. He was a photographer. And I reached out to him, and I said, I'd like to talk. And he said, okay, but let's not talk about photography. And I said, no problem. It's what you talk about through photography that touches me. And so we had a wonderful years of mentorship. He introduced me to Buddhism. And he said, don't be a Buddhist. Just if you find something useful there, keep it. And don't get involved in the trappings of photography, like the lenses or the darkroom work. Just doesn't matter what medium you use. It's just, what are you saying through it? He said, you're young. You have nothing to teach me about the world. I'm old. I've learned through it. So look, you have an empty bag. Go out in the world and fill that bag full of things that will help you, that you intuit will help you in the future. So, and that is just what I needed to hear, is that to follow my intuition. And my intuition told me, don't go to school. He even told me, I said, I don't know what to focus on. I'm interested in too much. And he said, well, then don't go. Don't pay for something if you don't know what it is you want. And so I felt encouraged, contrary to what my mother and father wanted for me. So I went out there and indulged in whatever it was I wanted to learn, and I figured my contemporaries would fill in the gaps, and so I pursued a wide array of things, which I guess in retrospect you'd call the humanities. I was interested in comparative religious studies and literature and art and philosophy and music. And so when in my mid-20s I decided to focus on our native language because I knew it was endangered, or it was considered dead, I said, well, it can't be. We need it. It's too important to a culture. We need our language. And so that set me on a path to talk with linguists that were focusing on our language in grad school. And I asked, can we revitalize our language? And they were real hesitant. And I was frustrated. And finally, through talking with them, linguists are interesting. Sorry, Greg. But they are loath to give you a conclusion unless they can back it up with science and data. So it's painful. It's like pulling teeth to get a conclusion from them. Can we revitalize our language? Yeah, I guess you can. But I learned soon that the hesitance wasn't because of our willingness, or the amount of data available. The hesitance was based on are we really going to dedicate ourselves to it? And I said, well, don't worry about that. And years later, I heard an elder talk once, and they said, well, what about this obstacle and these obstacles to get in your language back? And his answer was, well, we decided to revitalize our language, and so we're doing it. And I thought, yeah, that's the spirit. Who cares about the obstacles? Sure, you're always going to have an obstacle. It's always going to shift because you're always going to be making gains. And that's the spirit, just to be heaven bent on getting the language back. And so to begin with, my work was to gather all the important information we needed because, believe it or not, we're very fortunate. Our language survived, which is rare, but our language survived nearly 200 years after contact. A lot of other tribal languages fell out of use earlier, a lot earlier, because of conquest. But when the Spanish came here, it's kind of a silver lining type of situation. We were centralized at the missions, and at the missions we were exposed to diseases, and we experienced what the anthropologists term 90% genocidal impact, which is a weird kind of way of putting it. 90% of our populace died. Imagine if there's no more McCormicks. The McCormicks are done. These last names of people that will no longer be pulsing through the ages. And so I think because we were so reduced, but also because of the benevolence of the padres at our mission in San Buenaventura, the padres gave Mass in our language. They learned our language. The first writing of our language was a confessionario. It was an instructional from Padre Sagnon on how to give confession in our language. It's a really helpful document for our language revitalization. Once you get past the strange surface questions of, which I won't go into, but, and what's interesting is there was another padre, Santa Maria, who was early on too. I think it was he who was rebuked by his higher-ups in Mexico City that they said, look, you got to quit giving Mass in their language. And he said, yeah, all right. But he kept doing it anyway. And when the Americans, so what happened was the Spanish were kicked out and the new nation of Mexico was formed in 1821. and they inherited Alta California, and they weren't really imperialistic in nature, so they neglected Alta California. And by the time the Americans came through and gained these lands from the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, the parish at the broken down mission in Ventura were exclusively Chumash people. Most of the more well-to-do Spanish Catholic people already had moved outside of the city and had their own new Catholic churches. And so they were, I think, still giving our Mass in our language, because we found an 1853 papal bull describing the institution, the official bull regarding Immaculate Conception, written in our language in 1853. And we're trying to track down who wrote this, because why? Well, they must still have been teaching us in our language. And so it wasn't until after the American period, and we were really in the throes of economic survival in the early part of the 1900s, that the children stopped being taught the language. And the first language speakers died in the 1960s. But we are very blessed because a man named John Peabody Harrington, an ethno-linguist, worked recording over 150 different Indian languages for the Smithsonian. But he worked with our tribe more than any other, our language family, because he grew up here. And so we are very fortunate to have over 100 microfilm reels full of information. Each of these reels numbers anywhere from 500 to 1,200 pages. And so I didn't know at the first, when I started reaching out to get we rely on the archival record. So that was my first step, is to go out and get the archival record, everything we'll need to revitalize our language. And so I didn't know how voluminous it was. I was very naive. And in my quest in searching for our stuff, digitization was just coming about. A friend of mine said, "Check this out." I said, "What's that?" She said, "It's a zip disk." I said, "What's a zip disk?" She said, "Well, it holds this much more than the floppy disk." I said, "Well, wow, okay." And she said, "I snuck a bunch of Harrington notes onto it at the museum." I said, "Really?" And the light bulb went on over my head. That's how we're going to get this archive. Because until then, all we could do is get Xerox copies at 10 cents a copy. And of course, we didn't know how voluminous it was, but we could pay $100,000 and get all those, but only have one copy, So thankfully, the digital world grew up as my needs were growing. And in 2013, the Smithsonian Institute finally digitized the entire Harrington collection of handwritten notes, which doesn't just benefit us, but all the other 149 people and languages that he worked with. So that was a wonderful thing. And I didn't know it, but we were the pilot project for that. And they didn't tell me. They just humored me. And so once we get and there's a lot more to the archive, and I've called it the Lulapin Archives, and I've just assembled it all. But mostly I've worked on trying to figure out, how do we get this ink and paper and put it back into the body and blood and breath? That's the task here. And to that end, I've become a board member of Advocates for Indigenous California Language Survival, where I've had the honor of serving all the other languages within California. There's over 100 languages. Of the 300 or so indigenous North American languages, 100 are in what they call California today. And so it's a great diversity and a great concentration of indigenous language work. And I'm also fortunate to know people all the way up and down the West Coast and elsewhere. And I've learned from them, and I've learned from their mistakes, and I've contributed to their mistakes. And we have worked through, coming from a background in construction, if you have the need of a bathroom and you have the money and I can get the materials, I have the skills, and if I have some time, I can do some work. In about a week, you're going to have a brand new bathroom. And I knew I couldn't apply this kind of routine to language revitalization. However, I've always been interested in something solid to stand on. Tell me what to do, just so I can make some gains. And I have to admit, a lot of us have been stabbing around at methods and methodologies, but we have we have settled on a method. And by no means is it the method, is a method. And just in a nutshell, so I don't, how am I on time?
Great. About 5 more minutes.
Okay. So in a nutshell, how we're doing it is we have learned a lot of audacious stuff that might sound audacious, but we've learned that people don't learn language and then use it. They learn through using language. It's the other way around. That's how we all learned language, by listening to our parents and mimicking them and talking back, and that's how we acquire language. And so that's what we've done. And one thing is we don't have lessons or classes per se, where people then are expected to go home and implement the language. Instead, our classroom is each person's bathroom to start. And we nest the language. We learned a technique from the Maori where they have daycares where they nest the language in the children. We've modified that. What we do is we nest the language in a space in our home that we all share. And we build up our command of the language in that space and kick English out and make the bathroom a Chumash only zone. And then we go to the kitchen or our bedroom, and we try to create spaces where English is no longer allowed. You can speak French, Russian. If you come visit to my kitchen, I'll have to learn Russian and French, but no English. And it's not because it's a bad language, it's because it's dominant, and you can get that anywhere. But we need to make space for our language and times where it's expected to be spoken in order for it to be used. And that's another huge challenge, because in a sense it feels manufactured and it feels unnatural, but that's one of those obstacles where we just need to push through that. And I told my mentor once, I said, self-narrating, brushing your teeth or washing hands all the time, it's kind of weird. And the next day he came back and he said, you said it was kind of strange. He goes, it is, but think of it as an opportunity to speak your language. And I'm like, okay, I'll think about that. And sure enough, like every day I can go into my shower and wash my body, and I have it laminated and then Velcroed to the thing, the whole list of all body parts, and I can recite what I'm doing at the time. I'm washing my hair, I'm washing my feet, and brushing my teeth, and everything we do in the bathroom I've worked out, and I share that with my fellow learners. And I don't call them students, although maybe they are. I just started earlier than them, and I'm handing on to them the challenges that they'll have in the future that, and they'll further the whole task. And so that's what we do. We build a language nest, and I have a home where I'm turning it into a language home. And we also do conversation. And we're just building up our command of it. And we also further our linguistic work, because there's deep sentence structure that we need to make gains on. The curriculum is not written yet. We've left all this curriculum like I'm telling you. And the beautiful thing is you don't need to set time aside to speak the language. You don't need to make time to speak your language, because you just do it when you're washing your hands. You do it when you're brushing your teeth. You do it when you're making oatmeal or frying an egg or making toast or cereal. You do it when you're watering the garden. You do it when you're putting your clothes on. I have it all up, and I leave it up, even though if you spend a week on one of these, what we call domains, 8 sentences about washing your hands. You spend a week on that and you re-embody it and you own it, you have it, and it's back into breath. And that's how we turn the archival record into spoken language and used language. And at one point I thought, there might be light at the end of the tunnel. It's all very a lot of doubt, a lot of questions. And I thought, well, even if I don't become fluent, the future won't have to do what I did in gathering up the information and figuring out things. And then, but if we even think harder and think positive, then we get better metaphors, like the metaphor of an hourglass that has nothing to do with time, but more just the shape. I think of all that existed in the past, that boiled down to this dark time where we're reliant on this smaller archival record, of there's obviously less than what existed before. But we have this valuable record. And we come to a time when the language went to sleep, and then the language is being woken up and reused. And then it dawned on me, we need to create new words, like our word for refrigerator is a word of a thing that makes warm things cool. And we do it in our way of making words. Saktaha is a word for getting out from under the shade of the sun, cooling down under the shade of a tree. And so we call the refrigerator Saktaha, the thing that makes warm things cool. And so that we're going to make these new words. And so we're going to expand on what we've inherited, and it's just going to blossom out like the bottom of an hourglass, or the top, however way you want to look at it. It's an open metaphor. And we're going to blossom into more accessible spoken language for the future. And so it's very heartening. And that's the work that we're involved in for the language. And I think that's about good timing.
Thank you.
On my part.
Fantastic timing, and I just wanted, Matthew gifted this to us,
Yeah.
and I just wanted you to say a few words about the sage.
Well, this is white sage. This is white sage. It's used all across Indian country. Comes from here and elsewhere, but we cleanse with smoke, much like the churches do with their incense and stuff from Eastern Europe and elsewhere. And we also cleanse, believe it or not, we use what they call coastal sage, which is not a sage, it's an artemisia. We call it wawai. And it's frilly and real beautiful. We wrap bundles of that, and we use it in water, and we smudge that way with water. That's a more traditional way, and it has nothing to do with Catholicism. It's something that existed before, so cleansing with water, cleansing with smoke, it's something that unites us all.
Thank you so much. Thank you.